Let's get into what's changed in the market. And I'm going to get into the first exact point that I was mentioning just before, and that's just the ridiculous money printing in the system at the moment. Now, the reason I call this ridiculous is because people need to understand what happens when more money is floated in the system. So first of all, generally you get more inflation. And I'll get into that in more detail in a sec as well. But what the key thing that worries me the most is it's the distribution of wealth between the very wealthy and everyone else. That's the key thing, because when inflation happens and you have more people that actually, more money in the system, what happens is you have inflation, and then what happens is the right assets, which is generally real estate, business, precious metals, things that are tangible that are actually worth something. The only people that actually generally afford the right things are the very wealthy. So it actually makes it. What happens is it actually makes the wealth divide even further. Now you can see in this graph here just what's kind of happened. So this goes right to the mid 80s, right through to 2022. You can see there, look, it did go up a little bit right up to about the year 2000, don't get me wrong, but it's really exponentially increased since then. And I'm telling you right now, if you do this to 2025, and you'll see what's going to happen towards the late parts of the 2020s into 2030 here, that sort of exponential graph will continue. The M1 and M3 money supply especially, like you can see the currency is just gradual, but those other M1 and M3 money supplies is just ridiculous. And to be honest, if we really care about getting a sort of more equitable society, and not only that too, but also a society where you don't have people that are ungodly wealthy compared to everyone else, that they probably need to slow down the money supply here. And a large part of that is obviously a dollar being taken off the gold standard. It's not based on anything that's real. Now, I'm not necessarily saying it has to even be on the gold standard. It could be based on the productivity and the resources of the nation or something like that that's actually tangible. But when you have a fiat currency like we have, and you just completely print more money, you get issues like we're having at the moment. So this is going to continue because the government doesn't know any other way. And to be honest, the system is actually set up in a way that this has to continue. So this is a thing that's completely changed since the dollar's taken off the gold standard, and this will continue to happen. And look, since then, obviously, because we've had a lot of more money printing, asset values have gone up, which also means the actual mortgage book, or not only the mortgage book, but I'd say the actual rate of mortgage and the actual amount of a mortgage someone needs to get into a home has gone up significantly. So because of that, markets have become a lot more reactive to interest rates. Now, Sydney and Melbourne are your two best examples of this. Don't get me wrong, 100% they are. But I'm telling you, with the booms of Perth, Adelaide, and Brisbane, they will also become more reactive to interest rates, 100%. So you can see here, this is only going to the year 2000 or so. But you've got in the dark sort of blue, you've got that kind of like a royal blue. You've got the cash rate target there, so that's the RBA interest rate there, and then you've got the house price growth. So clearly you can see here that, if interest rates go down, you generally have growth going up. Obviously, the key parts where that kind of didn't happen was probably your 2017-18, and that was because of APRA. So that's just regulation change that can happen as well. But this is one of the key reasons why interest rates won't go too much higher than they are today, and they can't see it for the next 5 or 10 years or so. It's because there's just so much money now in the system. They don't have any other way other than keep them fairly low, despite where interest rates go. Not interest rates, but despite where even inflation goes, to be fair. So that's kind of what we've got at the moment. And really being honest with you, this is what's going to continue to happen. I can't see it going any other way. So, for the near future anyway. So that's just something that's different about the market. So it's not your pre-80s or even pre-90s market where houses were, 3 to 4 times income. It's like minimum 8+ for most of the good areas to buy now, probably except for Geelong. But that's kind of where we're at today, to give everyone an idea. Another reality we need to get used to and honest with ourselves with is the immigration numbers. It's probably not the most popular topic for everyone, but it's just being transparent. This is what kind of happens. This is Matusik data. And look, I haven't showed you the full data, but really what you need to know is really since kind of the late 90s, whether it's been Labor or Liberal in power, there's been high immigration for both of them. Slightly probably higher for Labor, 100%. They definitely like it a little bit more. What I'd say is don't listen to what they say. Look at the actual what they do and look at the statistics, because the politicians, let's be honest, they always lie. They say they're going to do this, they don't do it. I'd say the Matusik data here is probably correct as to where they think it's going to go. So they said they'd cut it, but I think you'll find that this will just continue to increase. And this, to give you everyone an idea, our actual population increase from the 2.6 here, what it proves is, and this is ABS data as well, what it proves is it actually isn't increasing because of natural increase. It's almost entirely because of net overseas migration. That's where our increase comes from. So look, population growth combined with obviously building shortages as well, all that does really is it's going to continue extra demand and continue lower supply. So demand to supply ratio, particularly in key areas, is going to keep getting worse. And because of that, you'll have continued increases in house prices because of that. And that's going to continue for, I see, at least probably 10 years or so. I can't see it really changing in that time. So, I mean, yeah, that's where we're kind of at, just being transparent with everyone. Look, there's a lot more other things I should mention, everyone. So, I mean, government-backed housing programs are a perfect example of that. Now, I actually think, contrary to what a lot of other people would think, every government-backed housing program is actually worse for the actual economy and worse for house prices because it lets more people get in the market and it pushes the very bottom of these markets right up. That's the issue you have. So just a few of them to let everyone know. You've got the first home buyers grant, and that's one. You have the 2% deposit scheme for some people that are within the market and that meet certain criteria. And that is also no LMI. You also have in 2026 the 5% deposit scheme coming in. These also have no stamp duty applicable either, so that just increases prices as well. And then, as I said, no LMI for first home buyers. That's another thing at a certain price point. And you've got many other schemes there too. But the thing people need to know is all of these little schemes that we have going on here, what they do is they push up the very bottom of the market. That's the key thing that happens, which is where all your future generations buy. So I know it sounds awful, maybe terrible, but I actually think every single one of these is bad, especially that 5% deposit scheme. If you truly ask me what I think of that 5% deposit scheme, I call it the government-backed subprime mortgage scheme. So, okay, you could say it's not subprime because the government's backing it, which is true, but it's subprime because you're basically lending money to the most risky sort of people who who historically actually have the worst track record of paying mortgage repayments back. And to add to this, you also have the shared equity scheme, which I think is just ridiculous. And I don't think I've even thought of the administrative capacity of doing that. Like, I mean, you think about if someone, let's say, can't afford to pay their council rates or something like that because the government owns 30 to 40% of their house, right? And what happens there? Does the government then repossess part of their house, or do they just pay the government back with interest? How does it kind of work? And the amount of administration that would have to go on there is ridiculous. Like, I mean, obviously everyone here knows I obviously own properties myself, and I mean, things can happen. Like, for example, you might have a burst pipe that just something unlucky's happened. The pipe's just burst, and it might be a $10,000 to $20,000 job, right? And not like first home buyers are a good example of people that cannot afford a large hit like that at the get-go, and it's just how it is. So I don't think they've even thought of the administration purposes of that and how they're going to get it done. But anyway, that's what they do, and that's going to continue to happen. So that's different today because, I mean, you had a few policies back in the day, I mean, you know, pre-90s, pre-80s and that kind of thing where, you know, the government was helping out. Don't get me wrong, there was a few. But the simple fact of the matter is because house prices weren't, you know, 7 and 8 plus times income, they were more like 3 to 4, you didn't really have as many people struggling to kind of get in the market on average wages. But today you do, so this is why the government does it. So these are the reasons they have these programs. I can understand it, but it's not a good idea in my opinion. So anyway, this is set to continue. It's going to definitely continue even more. So that's another thing that's different about the market today. Look, a key thing I want to get into for everyone is I'd like to just give everyone some transparency over kind of what's happened here with inflation rates, unemployment rates, and everything like that. So, I mean, since basically 1980, and this is, mind you, I should just let everyone know here, this is US data. So if you probably need to take about 2%. The inflation data you don't need to take 2% off, but the unemployment data you do. So Australia's inflation rate is similar to the US, it just lags it slightly. But basically most Western countries since the 1980s have changed how they define inflation. So So what's kind of happened there is year after year after year, they've basically changed the mechanisms of control on that. Now, you'll have people that debate these topics and all that kind of, particularly government-backed workers will debate this, but you can see here you've got in the actual sort of orangey color there, you've got the underlying CPI number, so the inflation number. Then you've got basically, this is from Shadow Stats. So for people who don't know this, I strongly suggest you go and have a look at it. You've got Shadow Stats actual data, and it's based on the 1980s inflation number, which I think is actually very accurate. So you can see as the time's gone on, what's happened is basically the true inflation rate, which I think and Shadow Stats agrees with, is significantly higher than the inflation rate we're told. So you can see right now, if we look at 2023, where it was, we were told it was about 4%, but really it was about 12, right? Now, if we were to go today where I think it'd be, they would say it would probably be in the late 2s. I think it's about 8%. And you can feel that people know that as well. You go to the shops and just with your everyday living, you see things that you buy every day and you're just like, there's no way the inflation has been 2% over the last year when you see how expensive things are. Like, it's just people know it. And look, a key part, I'll give you a good example of what kind of happened in Australia here. So the actual increase in housing prices, and it's all housing, not only new housing like we have today, and rents, that was actually previously in the actual inflation readings, and that was taken off in the 2000s, believe it or not. So that's another thing that changed it quite a lot. And that's why we have things like this happening. I don't have the unemployment one here, but to give everyone an idea, it was basically shown at about 4 or 5%, and then basically in the Shadow Stats data, it was shown at about 25. Now, one of the key things over COVID that happened that changed the unemployment actual figures is that people who hadn't got a job for literally 6 months or more were no longer considered unemployed. So, like for me, those people are 100% unemployed, but the government's taken that out, and there's a lot. All you have to do is just look up Shadow Stats, look up the history of both inflation, unemployment, and everything that's going on, and you'll know what I'm talking about. This is a complete lie number, those rates. Complete lies, fabricated. Like, I mean, if you think like that's an actual true number, I think you'd believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny as well. That's all I'm going to say. Just really go have a look and deep dive into those kinds of stats, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Look, another key thing I want to let everyone know is you will have you do have now, and you did have it in the past. So this is a continuing thing that's going on, and it's continued industry and jobs in key locations. So I'm just split screening here two key cities. So this is just Sydney and Perth. Sydney on the left, Perth on the right. So you can see around the CBD in certain areas. So it's both sort of the eastern suburbs of Sydney, West, Lower, North Shore, where all the jobs are. Perth, kind of your inner city, probably 10K ring, and your northern suburbs, that's where all the jobs are as well. What happens is the government says we're trying to make it more equitable for everyone, but what they do doesn't suggest that. So, I mean, if you look at, for example, where the metro lines are put in Sydney, for example, it's Tallawong to Bankstown, really, and then it's also basically Parramatta into the CBD, so Hunter Street. That's where your lines are going. That follows where all these jobs are pretty much continuously. I mean, there's no doubt about that, what's going on. You look at even the light rail that goes out to like Randwick, Kingsford Junction. So that's where all the jobs are as well, really. Perth, no different. The Northern Line got upgraded right out to Yanchep. I mean, it follows basically where all the jobs are as well, and all the transport lines. Don't listen to the shit they say, but wherever the jobs are and the industry is, that's the places they pump full of money. They make good areas even better. Don't get me wrong, they make areas that are disadvantaged livable, but they're not great. You have new estates that have like a Coles Express to serve like 5 freaking suburbs, and it's just rubbish. You have no transport. You have nothing really nice kind of around there either. So, I mean, this is what the government does, and they're going to continue to do. And I mean, not unsurprisingly, because of that, you're going to have continued performance over the long term in our best markets. This is something that's indifferent from today, but it's an important topic to bring up in this episode. So this is just SA3 regions, CoreLogic 30-year report, housing growth over these areas. You can see here, Sydney, Melbourne absolutely dominate it. You have sprinkling of Brisbane there too. You do have other cities there too, but I mean, predominantly it's Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. I mean, if you really want to consider your regionals, it's certain inner parts of Geelong, certain inner parts of Newcastle, and some parts of the Central Coast are also good. Very few suburbs. So you could include some of Wollongong as well, also good in that. Very few pockets as well. What I'll say is of the Gold Coast is okay too. Very, like, a couple suburbs in the Sunny Coast aren't too bad either. And you do have a very few suburbs in Perth too that are good as well. As you know, those are the areas I buy. I mean, you could probably argue maybe 6 suburbs or 7 of Hobart are good over the long term if you pick it up at the right time of the market as well, which is what I'm going to get into next. But anyway, what's going to happen here, as I said, the government backs the key areas. All the money goes into there. All the jobs go into there. And this is where all the wealthy want to live. So they're the least affected and generally over the long term best performing. Now, some of these areas won't show up as your best performing regions over 1 year, but what will happen is you'll have consistent performance year after year after year. In the downturns of the market, they generally don't correct very much, whereas the areas that have your massive jumps really correct, and that's what brings them up to your average performance being the best over the long term. So that's going to continue to happen, no doubt about that. And yeah, that's what we just got to consider, what's going to happen in the market. What we need to also understand is in the market today is that we've got development of future cities. So it's not the same as it was years ago either. Today we've got things like this going on. So on the left here, you've got the 6 cities region. So for everyone, if they want to know where we're talking about, it's basically your Wollongong, your Eastern Harbour City, your River City, which is basically your Parramatta, your Greater West. So you've got both your Penrith and also both your Campbelltown, Camden region. Then you've also got the Central Coast and Newcastle in that. So those are your 6 cities to give everyone some transparency over where I'm talking about. So that's in New South Wales. So it's a Sydney Basin region, basically. Then you've got things like this on the right, your Geelong being an international city. So this is your development plan over the next 10 years. And look, if everyone wants to fact check me on this, there's predicted to be 30,000 manufacturing jobs to be coming into Geelong over the next 10 years. That's a city of Geelong. Geelong's only got a touch over 300,000 people. So it's about a 10% job increase or so in Geelong. You could also see the Southeast Queensland mega city, so the Gold Coast, Sunny Coast and Brisbane as a mega city. So that will probably happen in the future too. So you get things like this happening. I mean, this is the reason that you're going to see continued growth in these sorts of corridors. These are definitely things that are going on where key economic drivers are going to be put, key infrastructure, and people will move into. So that's just something that's also a little bit different, I'd say, as well. Another thing to consider. But that's basically a summary of everything that's different today. All really, really good points really there. And I mean, yeah, you can't really go wrong in buying the right area.